This is lesson 4.4, simplifying fractions. On grid paper, draw the two figures shown. Shade 4 out of 10 squares in one figure. Shade 2 out of the 5 rectangles in the other. You can see in the first figure here that the square represents 1/10 of the figure. In this figure, the rectangle represents 1/5. So the shaded portion in the top figure would be 4 out of 10. The shaded area in the bottom figure would be 2 out of 5. Based on the figures, what can you conclude about the fractions? Well, each figure has the same area shaded. So from the first figure, you have 4/10 shaded. From the second figure, you have 2/5 shaded. And what you conclude then is that those are equivalent fractions, which mean they have the same value. Different numerator, different denominator, but the same value. A fraction is in simplest form when the greatest common factor of the numerator and denominator is 1. In this particular case, 2/5 would be in simplest form. Write 6/24 in simplest form. Method number 1 simply says divide by common factors. Most people would recognize that 6 and 24 have 2 as a common factor, so they've divided both fractions by 2, or numerator and denominator by 2. The resulting fraction is 3/12. Again, they recognize that 3/12, 3 and 12, have 3 as a common factor, so they would divide a second time and end up with a fraction of 1/4, which would be 6/24 in simplest form. Method number 2, find the greatest common factor of the numerator and denominator. A much more difficult job in that you have to list factors of both numbers. Difficult for a lot of people to do. They must be listed in order from least to greatest. In this case, the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. The factors of 24 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. The resulting greatest common factor then is 6. So in this case, we divide numerator and denominator by 6 and get the same result of 1/4. So either method you use, 6/24 written in simplest form is 1/4. 36/45 in simplest form. They've decided here to find the greatest common factor. Listed all the factors of 36, which is quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, 12, 18, and 36. 45, 1, 3, 5, 9, 15, and 45. Greatest common factor then is 9. So divide 36 by 9 and 45 by 9. The resulting fraction in simplest form then is 4/5. Example A, 7/28, I'm sorry. One of the things I always check to see is, can I divide the top number, or the numerator, into the bottom number, or denominator? It's more common than you might think. In this case, it works. 7 is a factor of 28, so this particular fraction in simplest form would be 1/4. 8/20, we're going to divide by a common factor. We recognize that both of those are even numbers. We result then in 4/10. Again, recognizing that 4 and 10 have 2 as a common factor. The resulting fraction, which is in simplest form, fraction is 2/5. C, we're going to do prime factorization for this one. 27, the prime factorization of 27 is 3 times 3 times 3. The prime factorization of 36 is 4 times 9, which is 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. So the greatest common factor would be 3 times 3, which is 9. It's the product of the common prime factors, which determines your greatest common factor. So 27 over 36, dividing both numerator and denominator by 9, gives me 3/4. Lauren measured a grasshopper for a science project. Each line on the ruler represents 1/16 of an inch. Find the length of the grasshopper in simplest form. It appears to be right here, which would be 14/16. You notice here that they've also used the prime factorization method. The prime factorization of 14 is 2 times 7. The prime factorization of 16 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So divide both numbers by the common prime factor. In this case, then, the fraction in simplest form is 7/8. A carpenter measured a shelf and found it to be 10/16 inches thick. Find the simplest fraction. Find the simplified fraction in this case. Both numbers have 2 as a common factor. We divide by 2, we get 5/8. 5 is prime. 8 does not have 5 as a factor, so 5/8 is your fraction in simplest form. 8/16, an example E. Says a carpenter measured a board to be 8/16 inches thick. Find the simplest fraction, or the simplified fraction. In this case, again, I recognize that the numerator is a factor of the denominator, so I'm going to divide both numbers by 8. The resulting fraction in simplest form then is 1/2. Write each fraction in simplest form. Check your understanding. Example number 1, 3/9. Again, I recognize that both fractions have 3 as a factor, or both numerator and denominator have 3 as a factor, so my resulting fraction in simplest form is 1/3. Number 2, 4/18. I'm going to divide by a common factor here. I see they're both even numbers. Both have 2 as a factor. My result then is 2/9, which is in simplest form because 2 is a prime number and 9 does not have 2 as a factor. Number 3, 10/25. Because both numbers end in 0 or 5, I recognize that they have 5 as a common factor. Divide both by 5 and I get 2/5 as a fraction in simplest form. Number 4, 36/40. I'm going to do prime factorization here. 36 is 4 times 9, so that's 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. 40 is 4 times 10, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. The product of the common prime factors would be 4. 2 times 2 is 4. So the greatest common factor here is 4, 36/40. 36/40. Divide numerator and denominator by 4. My simplified fraction then is 9/10. Mary received $15 for her weekly allowance. She spent $10 at a movie theater with her friends. What fraction of the money in simplest form was spent at the theater? 10 over 25, or 10 over 15, pardon me. Both numbers end in 0 or 5, so both have 5 as a factor. I divide both by 5 and I get 2/5, or 2/3 actually, which is the fraction 10/15 in simplest form. The vocabulary from this lesson: equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value. An example would be 1/2 and 2/4. A fraction in simplest form is in simplest form, and the greatest common factor of the numerator and denominator is 1. In the above example, 1/2 would be in simplest form because 1 and 2, the only common factor they have is 1. 2/4 would not be in simplest form because both of those numbers, numerator and denominator, have 2 as a common factor. At this point, you should quit the video, go back to my Moodle page, log in to Lesson Quiz 4.4. Username is your 6-digit student number. Your password is the first 6 digits of your last name and your 2-digit birth date.